Yes!
The Destiny community was turned completely upside down when Bungie announced the sunsetting of Legendary Gear and the Destiny Content Vault. If you weren't already aware, the Destiny Content Vault, or DCV for short, is basically a cache where Bungie would throw older pieces of in-game content into and cycle other pieces of content in. If you didn't start playing Destiny 2 until after Beyond Light launch, that means that you weren't able to visit planets such as Mars, Io, Mercury, and Titan, and this is because these planets were sent to the Destiny Content Vault. These 4 destinations were a part of Destiny 2 since the earliest days of Year 1, and as Destiny 2 improved as a game, it left behind most if not all of its Year 1 shortcomings. These 4 destinations existed during the time when Destiny 2 was at its literal worst. The weapons we currently know as special weapons shared the heavy slot with weapons such as rocket launchers and swords. All PvP game modes were 4v4, kill times in PvP were incredibly slow, and all legendary weapons had one trait perk and static rolls. Yeah, the game was an absolute mess, and many people stopped playing Destiny 2 as a whole, no joke. As stated previously, Destiny 2 did improve over time, and the game that we know today is almost an entirely different entity than it was 3+ years ago. But unfortunately, Mars, Io, Mercury, and Titan were pretty much left behind, especially after the Dreaming City, the Moon, and the Tangled Shore were introduced later. The Leviathan raids, consisting of the Leviathan itself, Crown of Sorrows, Eater of Worlds, and Spire of Stars, were also sent to the Destiny Content Vault for the same reasons that the 4 planets were, and I'll explain why. Sometime in Year 3, Bungie stated that the armor system will receive a huge revamp and will be known as Armor 2.0, bringing forth a lot more customization options for armor, and before Armor 2.0 existed, all weapon and armor mods were one-time use. But after Armor 2.0 was introduced into the game, all mods could be used indefinitely, which furthered the creative possibilities of armor customization and build crafting. Now back in Year 1 of Destiny 2, armor didn't have perks at all, like literally at all. All you could do is switch between 2 nodes that would either be recovery, resilience, or mobility based. So in the most literal sense, armor in Year 1 was purely cosmetic. Now if you were around back then and realized how useless armor was back in Year 1, it became even more useless when the Forsaken expansion launched in 2018, which kicked off the second year of Destiny 2. That's because randomly rolled weapons and armor sets with perks made their debut at this time. However, when Armor 2.0 was introduced into the game, every armor piece that had the potential to drop in game would always drop as an Armor 2.0 variant, even if it was armor from Year 1. This was great news considering that we were given the opportunity to use some of our favorite armor from Year 1 and not have to worry about it providing zero utility like it did in the Year 1 days. Unfortunately, only a handful of Year 1 weapons were given a random rolls treatment, and if you did activities on any of the planets that were present in Year 1, there was always some likelihood that a Year 1 weapon could drop as a loot reward. And once again, all Year 1 weapons had one trait perk and static rolls, so imagine how disappointing it would have been to have something like this drop in game. This stigma also applied to the Year 1 raids as well, meaning that fan favorite weapons such as Midnight Coup and Inaugural Address never received random rolls. So if you were to revisit any of the Year 1 raids, only some of your loot would be worthwhile. Now for the longest time, I assumed that there would have came a point in time where the Year 1 content would receive the Year 2 treatment. I uploaded a video some time ago theorizing future content consisting of the Leviathan becoming a patrol zone and Year 1 weapons getting random rolls. And a part of me really believed that this would have happened. So you could only imagine how confused I was when I found out that Bungie was vaulting the entire Leviathan and the 4 destinations that I mentioned earlier. But after some hard thinking, I realized that this was the best route to take. And from a realistic standpoint, the vaulted destinations offered little to nothing to the game. Mercury was disappointing because it only consisted of the front and backyard of the lighthouse and a single lost sector. We couldn't even ride sparrows on Mercury until Season 9, which is laughable because Mercury first came into the game in Season 2, which was when the Curse of Osiris DLC released. Now Mercury sucking so badly as a destination personally annoyed me as a Destiny 1 veteran since I made it to the lighthouse and Trials of Osiris a bunch of times, which was and still is a social space on Mercury. And I also enjoyed Mercury-based PvP maps such as Burning Shrine and Vertigo. And to have the opportunity to visit Mercury as an actual destination in Destiny 2, that was super exciting. But when you realize that it was impossible to visit the Infinite Forest outside of strikes, and the millions of times that Bungie recycled it for the Festival of the Lost and the Revelry live events, it was pretty obvious that Bungie didn't plan on the Infinite Forest being anything special despite how much they hyped it up before the Curse of Osiris DLC release. Titan wasn't a destination I cared about too much, but I always felt that it could have been great because there were a lot of areas here that were designed so amazingly, specifically the arcology. And for the longest time, I couldn't wrap my head around why Bungie never had any strikes or maybe a raid base there. Mars and Io were actually not too bad at all. Io was nicely sized and had a handful of lost sectors and a few strikes based there, while Mars was on the smaller side. I like both of these destinations because they were aesthetically pleasing and I found myself visiting them a lot. I've always been the type of person obsessed with opportunities, and it bothers me when so many of them are missed. So as the game grew older, it was a terrible realization that these planets were completely forgotten about and left behind. I always thought that it would have been in Bungie's best interest to repurpose these destinations so that they could be on par with the content that was released in later seasons, but from a realistic standpoint, it was a much better idea to simply throw these destinations into the DCV and bring them back later. I would rather for something to be removed from the game and come back at a more definitive time than to be in the game taking up space, especially when you realize how much faster the game's load times have been since these destinations have been removed. Also realize another thing. Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 both had Mars as a destination, but it was two completely different parts of the planet, and due to the fact that Destiny 1 destinations are also a part of the Destiny content vault, it wouldn't be outlandish to assume that when Mars makes its return, we'll be able to visit the Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 versions of Mars. These destinations never got the Year 2 and Beyond makeover that I hoped for, but I can only assume that when they return later, they'll be significantly better than what they were before. Now when it comes to the raids based on the Leviathan, there was a huge difficulty and or complexity gap between them and the raids released later on, for the exception of the Crown of Sorrows raid. The Leviathan raid itself was a fully fledged raid for the most part, but Eater of Worlds and Spire of Stars were originally referred to as raid lairs, which was a brand new terminology that created a lot of skepticism in the Destiny community. Especially me, because I actually uploaded a video talking about Curse of Osiris before it came out, back when Bungie used the words raid content, air quotes, to refer to what we would be getting in the Curse of Osiris DLC. I figured that if we were getting a raid, Bungie would have specifically said that, but the words raid content sounded like we would be getting something added on to what we already had. And that's literally what Eater of Worlds and Spire of Stars were. So instead of getting standalone raids, we were basically given raid encounter size add-ons that didn't differ that much from strikes if you really think about it. So when Bungie decides to bring back the Leviathan, Eater of Worlds, and Spire of Stars, it would only make sense if they were all integrated into one big Leviathan raid. Despite the fact that Eater of Worlds and Spire of Stars partook on the Leviathan, they were their own separate instances that couldn't be accessed from the regular Leviathan raid. So to me, it would only make sense if they came back as encounters for the regular Leviathan raid. This would be the best route to take because the original Leviathan only had 3 puzzle-based encounters and a boss fight at the end. And aside from the Last Wish and King's Fall raids, all of the raids in the Destiny franchise have consisted of about 4 or 5 encounters and a final boss fight. Now the Deepstone Crypt raid threw us for a loop and gave us an extra boss encounter, which I was very happy to find out. So think about how dope it would be if the Leviathan raid had Argos, the planetary core, Val, Kawur, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm talking about the Spire of Stars boss, and Emperor Callus as boss encounters, as well as the puzzle encounters that they all had. And despite the fact that the Crown of Sorrows raid also partakes on the Leviathan, it was its own separate, fully fledged raid experience. It was never referred to as one of the Leviathan raid lairs. Now there's something else that we have to factor in. Some time ago, Bungie stated that Destiny 2 can't grow forever, and ideally this only applies to the 8th generation consoles because everybody is fully aware of the capabilities of the Xbox Series X, PS5, and PC in comparison to the Xbox One and PS4. The Xbox One and PS4 have been out for 7 years now, and despite the fact that they're holding up amazingly, there's inevitably going to come a point in time where support for these consoles will stop, and Bungie will shift their focus over to the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Destiny 2 on the Xbox Series X and PS5 look a lot nicer and have amazing frame rate, since the 9th generation consoles and PC have significantly better hardware, processing output, and are just better overall. And in order for Bungie to allow Destiny 2 to grow and become better, the 8th generation consoles will have to be left behind. So in a nutshell, this means that Bungie is abiding by the out with the old, in with the new ideology. This is more than a fair prediction based on the fact that the same thing happened in Destiny 1. When The Taken King was the final expansion released for the Xbox 360 and PS3, Rise of Iron never released for the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of Destiny 1, and neither did Destiny 2. And this was the best move Bungie could have made because if you really think about it, Destiny 1 was theoretically a 7th generation title simply because of the fact that it was playable on 7th generation consoles. It didn't make a difference that it was also available for Xbox One and PS4 because the Xbox One and PS4 versions of the game were never able to brandish the full potential of the game. This held Destiny 1 back a lot, and the game could have performed much better if it was never released for the Xbox 360 and PS3, but for the sake of uniformity and fairness, everything had to perform at the 7th generation console level. So it's more than safe to assume that when Mars, Io, Titan, Mercury, and the Leviathan raids returned to the game from the Destiny content vault, it'd be after Destiny 2 was no longer being supported on the Xbox One and PS4. That would be the point in time when the year 1 weapons return with random roles, and we might even see these destinations and raids completely repurposed. Who knows? All I know is that this is something to think about and something to expect, because I honestly don't see all of this content staying in the Destiny content vault forever. Alright everybody, that does it for this one. Now, I don't work for Bungie, nor do I have any inside information in regards to what they plan on doing with all of the vaulted content, but I would imagine that we'll be seeing the vaulted content release over time, but definitely not all at once. Y'all should know how Bungie gets down by now. Old content always makes its return and receives promotion as if it's brand new. No, but all jokes aside, I'm cool with old content returning provided that it's better than what it was before. If you're gonna bring it back, just repurpose it. Make it worthwhile, don't bring it back at all. That's just me though. But anyways, if you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed what you watch, do me a favor and thumb rest to that like button until it turns blue. Now if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.
Can redeem you and me. Don't you wanna feel something? And oh, I miss loving you, but I need to live my own truth. I wanna feel it all brand new. I found a little something from Miss Angelou. Take the good and hold it near to you, and let go of all that burdens you.